Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you from the bottom of that pile of bodies that was your adventuring party. I'm your host, Conor O'Brien, and joining me as always is my co-host, Mr. Martin O'Dwyer.
Hey, Connor.
I thought I'd keep it light today, you know?
Yeah, jeez, that's a hell of an intro from what was it from under the pile of corpses that used to be your adventuring party.
That was past tense, your adventuring party.
Oh, yeah, jeez, that one very nearly occurred in our campaign recently. But no, I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a fun week. I got to go to a really awesome gig during the week, and
Yeah, looks
yes,
really good.
it was so much fun. You haven't lived till you've seen like a 6'8" Swedish man beat the crap out of a giant inflatable world serpent
Yeah.
with a massive Mjolnir. Like it was
For
like
for those who are wondering what concert Martin's talking about, he went to see him on a marathon during the week.
yes, it was the Monomarth and Machine Head up in Dublin, the Vikings and Lionhearts tour. It was very very excellent, and my neck has just recovered from headbanging. Yeah, I was going around like
Very
RoboCop
cool.
or like fucking Batman Begins Batman, just moving with my shoulders. But I would keep forgetting that I couldn't like do this or this, and I'd be like, dude, I'd be like working on it, like I'm, ow. Like, I
Yeah,
felt so fragile and so old. But yes, it was awesome. Like they have a song. They played their song "Deceiver of the Gods," which is obviously about Loki, and they had a guy come out in full like crazy gold Loki armor with a big skeleton face mask, with glowing green eyes, and big curving Loki horns. And he'd like a
very cool.
spear, and he like ran around the stage and like pointed it out at the crowd and stuff. They really go ham on their stage show. It's incredible. It's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. But yes, it's been a very good week. We also had some really cool D&D sessions. I got to run a really fun session as well this week. So yeah, happy out.
I actually heard about your session this week. What happened there?
Oh, so this week, so currently my guys, they've kind of basically the Elven Kingdoms and the Kingdom of Nifl have currently like agreed to an alliance to face off against the big bad guy of my campaign, which is Mirkir, the god of darkness and the void. And so those two have agreed to basically an alliance to fight him, and then they're sending summons to the other countries and continents to try and get them in on it as well. Um, he about 4 weeks ago he snapped one of the countries into thirds.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and it's partially overrun with monsters, and there's like a resistance keeping them back. And yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff going on, but it's, at the moment, so in my party we've our blood hunter Tharson, and he's part of a group called the Kin, who are essentially like the Witchers.
Yeah.
For just ease of conveyance. And he has grown to a point now where he's one of the highest ranked in his order, and they're kind of on not personal terms, but like they would be on like first name terms with the King of Nifl basically, and they are in part of the negotiations where that was hammered out between the Queen of the Elves and the King of Nifl. And he handed Thurston like a scroll, like a sealed scroll with his seal on it. Was like, will you bring that to the kin and ask them if they will participate in the war on our side? And it has an offer and a proposal for what they'll be rewarded with if they do agree to join. But that's a big thing, because like in my world, that I figured that they basically hide their home base. No one knows where their actual organization is
Right.
based out of. It is heavily protected and kept secret, because they were almost wiped out previously by people who were hunting them for being lycanthropes. So he's at the moment he is bringing the party from a city called Darkfell on another continent, the continent of Darkfell. I know. And they're
Hey,
heading.
sometimes the capital city of a place is just the name
Yeah,
of the place.
yeah. The what was it? Oh crap! I can't remember. It's the great city of something. Oh yeah, in League, the region of Demacia, their capital city is the great city of Demacia.
There you go.
You
Yeah.
know. But yeah, they're heading northwards now up through Darkfell to on a trek to the Kin's home base, and the blood hunter is leading the party that way. And they've gone through this forest. They were attacked by Sorrowsworn at the end of last session. Sorrowsworn I'm kind of using as the minions of the Void God.
Makes
And
sense to me. Yeah.
he previously told them that he'd never let them rest after he killed one of his favorite lieutenants. So periodically now they get attacked by Sorrowsworn. So they
Saurusworn are tough to fight. They're hefty, like.
they wiped. I put him up again. Like it wasn't meant to be a difficult fight. It was just meant to be like a spook, like a more of like a mood setter. So it was like
Yeah.
two of the last and then I had them vomit up the do you know the really tiny slug Saurosworn?
Yeah, so hungry or no, they're the big ones.
Yeah. No, they're like wretched or something like that.
Oh, the wretched.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So like they captured one of them in like this magic net thing they have, and it just like vomited up like four of those, and they were like, "What the fuck? This is so gross." So I like, but they know they milled them. They like destroyed them pretty quick because they just went all out. They just like went like straight all out in the two of them, and they only have like 78 hit points anyway, so they just got melted. But
I remember.
it wasn't meant to be a difficult fight. Like.
I remember in our first campaign, I ran a Saurus encounter for you guys. Basically, like a dwarven kingdom in the mountains had been entirely enshrouded in darkness, like persistent darkness. Um, and from out of the darkness, when like there was some dwarven soldiers basically holding a forward camp, and from out of the darkness through a passage in the mountains, a whole mess of these things came out. And you guys handled them okay, except for Aaron's character Enna, who was a rogue, and she was like not terribly squishy, but a little bit squishy. So she ran for cover inside of this kind of like office area. And when she ran in there, one of the ones with the three arms ran in and grappled her, and she had useless strength, so she couldn't break free. And like I think she broke free and then tried to move, but she could only move like half her speed or something like that. And then it just ran up on her again and grabbed her again. And until I think that one was the very last one to die in the fight, and only because you guys cleared out everything else outside, and then like three of you came in and just messed up that last one because she couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, they're really fun monsters to use. Them like super unique, and they have lots of like really interesting and great abilities and stuff like that. I added a little to them where as they approach, they darken the area around them, everywhere around them to like about a 20-foot radius, becomes dim light. Just because they are specifically minions of that god in my world. But yeah, he's currently leading them through this big forest, and like that happened, and they found like a treant body that they had massacred. That kind of was trying to like clue them into what was potentially out there, and they've heard more of them around the forest that they're in. But what really caught their attention was the sound of something really big with big wings moving through the air near them at night. And because it was so dark they couldn't see it. But it sounds extremely big, and one of my players rolled really really high in a perception check, so I narrated that they heard it swoop down, and the sound of like something large, like incredibly big, displacing a large amount of air as it dives. That kind of like that just looked like the sound of a truck moving past. And then very faintly the sound of like water splashing, and there's a big lake to the south of where they were in the forest they're in. And they were like, right, no one go near the lake. But where we ended this session with, and actually I can say this will come out after the next session we play, there is an ancient deep crow currently making its way towards where they are, and I've it's not seen them, but they have they had their raven psychic do like a perimeter fly around for an hour, and when he came back he was like, there's something really big coming this way, and I don't know what it is, but it's got feathery wings and it's terrifying. And so like that's kind of where we left it, and what I'm going to do is in the next session where it picks up, I'm going to just take up my phone, put on a 5-minute timer, slam it down in the middle of the table, and go, something that large winged creature that you know was either hiding in the lake or lives in the lake is approaching your location. You don't know whether it has seen you or not yet. You have 5 minutes to decide what you're going to do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I love using actual timers at tables.
the
You
level
do
of
it terribly often, but
stress, the level of stress that implements is unbelievable. I can't wait.
yeah. Yeah, no, I've and like doing it with like skill challenges and stuff as well is really fun. Yeah, no, it's just it definitely like, ups the stakes immensely, because you can fudge time so much when you're just playing the game normally that you can be like, you can kind of have a bit of table crosstalk and stuff like that, or not crosstalk rather, but just kind of table talk where you're like, hey, maybe we should do this or that, and like you discussing that for 20 minutes can be a 2 or 5 minute conversation in game.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just like drop a timer on the table or whatever, like people will absolutely start panicking, and I like that because you get like an authentic, like, what would you do if people can have all the time in the world to think of the most rational answer, they'll do the most rational thing.
Yeah.
But if you put them in a tight situation and go, you got 3 options and they all have downsides, which ones are going to be? And then you go, also, you only have 3 minutes to decide. like they're gonna make a call, but it might
Yeah,
not be the most optimal one. But I like that. You know, you can make
yeah.
bad calls
It'll be
sometimes. They can kind of
it'll be your gut instinct rather than anything that's like
yeah,
logic out.
exactly, and it'll be authentic as well, which
Yeah,
I think is really cool.
it's
I like authenticity when it comes to making decisions and stuff like that, rather than just doing it's something. And this isn't necessarily a a call out on you guys as players, but you're such experienced players that you know the most optimal player thing to do, but not necessarily the most like optimal character or RP thing to do.
yeah,
So like you guys will act almost always in a very smart manner, but it's because you've been playing the game so long, that you just know like, oh, something's coming, and you're like, we can all roll stealth checks, or we can all roll stealth, and I know this character has pass without a trace, or they're gonna cast pass without a trace, and you know immediate. There's no tension because immediately you're like, I already know exactly what to do in a situation. You know?
you're just describing my party now because they have a druid that can cast pass without a trace and a rogue that rolls 35s for stealth every single game.
Man, bro,
He
do
rolled.
you
I think he rolled like a 45 last week.
you have a rogue in your party.
Yeah.
Does he is a he, isn't it? Is a he?
Yeah.
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 He's
Yeah.
a swashbuckler.
Yes.
Sea elf, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
CL Swashbuckler multi-classed into fighter gunslinger.
Yes. Um. Oh, the question I was going to ask.
You're gonna
Tell
ask.
me.
You were gonna ask if he does something specific.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was going to actually ask if you. I think you do. You run your game where nat ones, even for a rogue with reliable talent, are still a nat one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like. I think. Reliable talent technically says if you roll anything under 10, it becomes a 10, right? That's the way
Yeah.
it works. Yeah. I definitely rule like a one is a one is a one is the way I look at it. Like.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and we talked about that in like the one D&D thing that came out as well. And like I just think that Ginny D actually had a video about it recently because I think she was talking about that, and she's like, I don't like the idea of nat ones just being immediate failures, because if a rogue, for example, has reliable, is really good at something, they should be able to be good at it. And I'm like, I get where you're coming from, because
Okay.
if you go up to a door that's like a DC 10, and like you just happen to like crit fail on your lockpicking check, even though you're a level 15 rogue, that's not very fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like there should always be the option to fail, because that's where the tension comes from. That's where
Yeah.
the drama of the story comes from.
I look at it this way, right? So I didn't clear it, but I beat Elden Ring. I have a character, say, of like 120 something plus hours on it, and my character is like really strong and like can mess up bosses.
Yeah.
He's like he can do it. When I went back. Went back in the last one I was playing and went back to the starting area to farm a specific item, I still got ganked by like three things I wasn't expecting, and just because I messed up, they murdered me. But like,
Yeah.
if I had just gotten off one sword swing, they all would have insta died. But I messed up. Like, so I had all of the power and the experience and the strength built into my character to mess these guys up. But I essentially rolled a one on my check to press my buttons, and they just ganked me. Like, you know, like mistakes can happen. People can be caught unawares. Like,
Yeah.
that's how Harry
And like
Houdini died.
there you go. But like, yeah, I really feel like the nat one thing should stick. Because I hope it does. I really do. And look, regardless, I'm gonna keep playing that way anyway.
Yeah.
But I feel like when we had two rogues in the last game, both with reliable talent and both who could roll crazy high stealth, at a certain point, it's like, why am I even asking you for a roll? Can I stealth in here? Absolutely. I'm not even gonna ask you for a check, because like you cannot roll lower than like a 25 or something. Like maybe I'll roll a perception check, but I only have a 5% chance of succeeding, because the way I run natural 20s is if you get in at 20, you automatically succeed.
Yeah.
But like I have a 1 in 20 chance of these guys seeing you. We might as well just try and mitigate things a little bit, so there's a little more risk involved.
Yeah, I totally get you. And like I do, like even for stuff like that where it's like, I will still get them to roll stealth, because if there is someone coming, there is always the chance they roll a 20 and the 20 is a success, and then that's a whole other, like, how are they going to react to being discovered? Like, are they going to try and like silence that guy immediately quickly and then maybe ambush anyone who's coming up? So it gives the players. I basically DM just to see like my players do cool stuff. That's all. That's like 99% of the reason why I DM. I just want to see my players do cool stuff, and like if a guard discovering, say for example, because he's always the one who's going to be stealthing and he does a lot of scouting. See a guard rolls a nat 20, and he spots my rogue. My rogue then goes, okay, crap, I have a decision to make. do I try and kill this guy? And if I do try and kill this guy, I'm gonna have to use melee because all of my ranged weapons are guns. So
Yeah.
he's like, it gives him a series of decisions, and then he's got like specific abilities he can use for melee and for other stuff like that he can use in cool and interesting ways to try and like actually like do have a character moment. Like I think I mentioned in the podcast a few weeks back, but like recently my druid scried on something, and then instead of just like describing what he saw to the rest of the party, he used shape water, to basically like animate water to make it for like a 3D model of what he saw basically, and like that was one of the coolest usages of that spell I've ever seen.
Very much so. Yeah.
So like I like that's like I said, that's like 99% of the reason why I DM is just to see my players do cool stuff that surprises me, or just not even stuff that surprises me, just like fulfill the promise of cool stuff that's been set up for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Martin.
Yes.
Tell me, what is a TPK?
It's a totally perfect Kinder egg. No, it's a total party kill.
I mean, all Kinder eggs are totally perfect. That's why they're Kinder eggs. But
Yes.
yes, it's a total party kill.
Yeah. Honestly, when you were like, when I was trying to think of what kind of an intro you were going to do for this episode on TPKs, I thought it was going to be like, you're going to, hi, my name's Conor Bryan, and I'll be your host for today. Kill, double kill, triple kill, quadra kill, multi kill, kill-tacular. I thought you were going to do the like proper like old.
I should have. That's really good. I did have a different one I was thinking of doing at the time actually, and I was gonna go. Welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you with today's obituaries. But I was gonna read things from like 5th edition and older editions that is no longer used, and I would be like that first DM screen from 5th edition, or alignment or whatever else, like stuff people don't use as much as they used to anymore. Elves as a class.
No, that would have been really would have been really clever, yeah. But yeah, no, TPK. Basically when everything really goes tits up and the whole party drops.
Yeah, basically. And like a TPK is I don't know. We came close to one there recently.
We've come close a couple times.
And we can talk about that in a second. But yeah. I found myself in a weird space mentally as a DM, as a dungeon master, when it came to us almost having a TPK, and a part of it was like, oh no, think of all the like the unfulfilled stuff we'll have now because these characters have had their adventures cut short, and the other part of me was like, thank God I don't have to write any of that.
I totally get you.
But yeah, Martin. So yeah, we've had a couple brushes. For definite. What? We'll say when you're speaking of the ones you've experienced, are you talking about ones in our campaign or ones in previous campaigns of yours?
So Lug seems cursed, man. I'm not gonna lie, because the first campaign we played it, the one we played in together after you left, that basically ended in the TPK. Like not a full TPK, but I think out of 7, 3 at the most were left alive, and I was on death saves when I got pulled out. So. Like it was, that was true, and then the campaign just kind of ended after that for other reasons. But the big like half, like about 3/4 of the party getting just murdered, definitely impacted it. And as well, God, I felt so sorry for like our friend Ross was one of the ones whose character died. His character Valas.
The red Dragonborn paladin.
Yeah, red Dragonborn paladin of Bahamut.
Yeah.
And I felt so goddamn sorry for him. Because he had I think he was bronze.
Oh, he might have been bronze.
He was bronze because and this is why I know, because about I think like 2-3 weeks before that, he got like a skin rip tattoo with bronze dragon scales underneath on his arm for his character Valas, and I was just like, oh my God. And like the worst thing was he didn't even get like do you know the way like if you die in D&D sometimes, or if you get dropped, it can feel like a battle, like it's actually like satisfying or worthwhile, or at least you fought. Power word kill. Yeah. Just literally turn on, boom, done.
We could probably do a whole episode on spells that are hotly debated on whether or not they're acceptable. And power word kill would be one of the top ones to come up, because it, like, here's the thing. I don't rule out. I don't think there's any spell I rule out, right?
Hmm.
Because I feel like if it's in the game, it's on the table, and players can learn it just as much as
Yeah,
enemies can learn it. But at the same time, power word kill is just, if I'm remembering rightly, if you're under 100 hit points, you're dead now. You're just dead. I
if
chose you. There's no save. You're just dead.
I think you have to fail a save, no?
I
Hang on,
think it's just if you're, yeah. We'll have a look here
I'll
now.
have a look
I'm
on
going to
it.
bring up this app I have.
I would also say to be fair though, I would also compare to it like at least with a power word kill. If you get power word killed and you have someone who can cast Revivify, you're back up. Stuff like if you get disintegrated and drop to 0, and you just turn it,
Yeah,
I'm
turn to
sorry,
dust.
Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. Like you know,
Yeah. Power word quill. You utter a word of power that can compel one creature that you see within range, and the range is 60 feet, to die instantly. If the creature you choose has 100 hit points or
oh
fewer,
no,
it dies.
no save. Yeah, it says it there in the
No
attack save
save.
and none.
Now, it has zero effect if the character has more than 100 hit points. But I was just thinking about it now. D&D Beyond now tells you the exact hit points
Yeah.
of the player characters. So I don't know if like you could make an unbiased decision there by like burning, like, was it a ninth level
Yeah,
spell?
like I really, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I like ninth level spell, fair enough, but like that really feels like at least give you a save, even make the save at disadvantage, just like in case you roll like 2 nat 20s, just like just anything. But yeah,
Yeah, true.
I understand why it exists, but I think it's probably one of the worst feeling spells to have used against you.
Yeah. Yeah, at least with at least I get at least
Because you
I
power word
have a
kill
list there.
you power word killed me in campaign 1. I got better.
Did I power word kill you? Who
Yeah,
power word killed you?
Kefalax in his human form. It like we knocked him out of his human form and into his dragon form because he power word killed me, and that triggered my Mage Slayer reaction. So I hit him as he killed me.
As you were dying,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough spell. It's a really tough spell. Particularly like, was there a bit of a fight at least? Because again,
Oh
I
yeah,
wasn't
no,
there. Was
we got a decent. Oh, as in, oh sorry, with in the original campaign we played in
with that yeah with
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 Lass.
Valas, yeah.
So from what I remember of it, we were going under actually the Elven city you were from, and there was this like giant, ancient like dwarf settlement or something on there that was like no sorry we were going into an ancient dwarven city. Apologies, lots of ancient cities in that campaign.
Yeah.
We were going into this ancient dwarven city. No, it was, do you know the place where we fought that weird monster that like blammed out a load of like acid stuff and like nearly it was like the 3 tier boss fight we did that time.
I don't know if I was there
I
for
think no,
that.
I think you think you were there for that. It was the just before I got. It was the same session where Lug opened the doors and got shot to pieces.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that was the
Yeah,
ancient. It was a
yeah.
dwarven city of the dead or something like
Yes, that
that.
was it. Yeah, so we were back there because an NPC of ours, to like the guy who we went and got the bell, you got the bells for early in the campaign before I joined. Uh,
Maester something
I
or
think his
other.
name was Ashton actually.
I think it was Maester Ashton.
Yeah, basically he got
Yeah.
possessed by the spirit of the Horsemen of War, as in the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
I
Um,
thought he was
no,
death.
death. Sorry, death. He got possessed by
Yeah.
death. That was it.
You
Uh,
found this out after. I heard this
yeah.
secondhand. Sorry for correcting you.
No, you're grand. Thank you for correcting me. But he got possessed by the spirit of death, basically, and he was in the city starting up this thing that was only ever referred to as the mechanism. Which whatever, like, but it was like this giant machine. It
That
seemed to
sounds
be.
kind of cool. The
It
mechanism.
seemed to be.
You don't know.
It seemed to be doing some setting up some kind of like death ray or horrible undead army or construct thing that was just going to like destroy the whole city above it. And it was like this giant. It was like a 120-foot stretch from where we were hiding across this big open beam to this giant tower that the mechanism was in. And so one of us, what was Keith's character called? Kel.
Yeah.
Kel, he likes because he had really good stealth. He was a rogue ranger, and he like stealthed across, went into the tower, started sneaking up the tower, and like all the while he's dodging like patrols of like there's like death knights in with groups of other soldiers and stuff all in there. He's dodging them all the way up around, and he's basically just a solo mission the entire time. All the rest of us are back 120 plus feet away. Um, he goes up and eventually finds Ashton possessed by death, sneaks past him, and is about to go up the stairs when Death basically turns around and goes, "I'm giving you one chance. Leave now. You cannot stop me. Leave." And Kel went, "I'm going to use my bonus action to dash run up the stairs up to where the mechanism is, because you can see these big gears going between floors. Dashed all up and he goes, and I'm going to use my action to throw a vial of acid on these gears. And like, you think, good idea, right? The gears were like the size of a small car.
Oh, okay, and it covered. Okay,
Yeah. So
well,
one vial of acid, not going to necessarily do it, right? So obviously when he did that and then came back downstairs to try and get away, Death went, "You just threw acid on my machine." Okay. And like hit him twice and instantly knocked him unconscious. Like he just summoned his scythe and just went.
Okay, so I just need to get a, because I left this campaign, so I need to have a timeline on this. So I left. Okay, so we went to that was on the place my character was from.
Yeah.
And then we left that place because we went to that dwarven city before.
Yeah.
And went down a corridor and there was some giant bugs or something that were really, really tough. And we killed a bunch of them, but we were really messed up after it. So we were just like, let's leave.
Yeah.
We just left the dungeon entirely and climbed back out of this chasm and up to the surface again. And then I think we got drunk in a fountain. Instead,
oh my god, I completely forgot about that.
we literally just got drunk in a fountain
instead
of doing the quest.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight was probably very annoying for the DM. And then that's when I think like that session or the next session.
Yeah.
That's when Kel showed up for the first time. That's when he joined in. And then he's like, "Hey, I just got word. I was sent here to find you. We need to go back to the capital city. The king and stuff is asking for you." And then we went back and, okay, so yes, so we went back. Oh, do you know where I left off? We went back, we were in the city. There was that scene that played out where you were at the dock with Kat's character, and then you saw the guy who had betrayed your people, and you were like, I'm gonna murder him. And she's like, don't say anything, we're here by ourselves, we'll be murdered instantly. Because he's so much bigger than we are. Like,
she had to she cast Hold Person on me.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, it was,
so good. So
it was... No, it wasn't Kat's character. It was Veltari. It was Nicole's character.
Oh, it's Nicole's character. Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I was like, cast whole person on me. Dude, you're gonna have to do this because I'm about to go.
The equivalent of hold me back, hold me back.
No, but like actually hold me back though, because we're gonna get us both killed here. But yeah, we all split that bit where we all split up. Yeah, and then we went down under like a secret trapdoor in a tavern, and we were going through caverns and stuff. We did.
I mean, we made it out to a farmhouse, and we held up there for the night, and then we went back into the city, but into the Undercity. Is that the place where this all happened then?
No, so we you left, and then we kind of cleared that bit of story, and then we found out some other stuff that isn't super consequential to the discussion we're having. But basically, we had about another month or so play after that, maybe 2 months. Actually, probably like closer to 3. I'm hilariously. I say it's like 6 years ago now. It all kind of blends together, but like not super long after you left, basically, we had this whole thing where like the spirits of, basically, I know exactly why it happened, because I had just bought Darksiders Wrath of War edition, or whatever it's called, War Mastered edition, and I was having a conversation with our DM on Facebook chat, and I mentioned that I was doing it and how cool all the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse stuff was. And he got extremely into that concept on the Facebook chat, and suddenly the spirits of the apocalypse are released in our game, and Death possesses this NPC.
This is very quickly going to become us shit talking that to you. This is how he operated, right? Yeah. Someone would show him like a thing, and then all of a sudden that's all he can think about. If he decided that week I'm going to watch Critical Role, he would straight up rip off that episode of Critical Role. If he had been reading Game of Thrones that week, all of a sudden everyone is named Euron and everyone's job is a maester. Like he could, but the thing is, his bandwidth for it was only a week. He'd get the idea, be into it for like a week or two, and then he'd drop that storyline because something else has taken up his interest. The same thing with those bells you mentioned. They were from a book that he just flat out, I think we talked about it before. Yeah, we did. He got caught off guard because he's like, oh, they're called the blank blank bells, and someone's like, oh, from this book series, and he's like, oh. Yeah. Oh, you read that, did you? And it's like,
there were like 3 of us who had read that book series.
Yeah, exactly. And he was just like, he acted very guilty about it. Realistically, he could have been like, oh, cool, you know them, and just let it off. But because he acted guilty, it seemed worse.
Yeah, but to avoid just continuing that trend of talking,
I will rant for hours if we can. Yes, you go.
But yeah, anyway, to finish the story, basically, Death takes 2 swipes at Kel with a scythe, and basically, like, it's like a ton of, it's like a great scythe, so it's like double what a scythe is, and it was like, I think it was like 2d12 or something, and it was like had
Yeah.
an incredible amount of necrotic damage behind it. But he basically downed him in 2 hits, and then I think Kelly either failed death saves and died. Oh no, sorry, yeah, he was no, he didn't kill him in 2. He killed him in 2 rounds. So like when the second round started, because Velas he had done some he completed some specific missions related to his god. He now worshipped Io instead of Bahamut, and Io had given him like this ability to like sprout wings and like dragon wings and fly,
Cool.
and so like he flew, and then he had that sword that could cast Dimension Door essentially.
Yeah.
And so he did that, and then Dimension Doored up to where Kel was to try and help Kel. I think he revived Kel with a healing spell or like lay on hands, and then he'd like turned around to fight Death. I think like he had a turn against Death, and Death hit him with legendary actions or something. And then, alright, it's Death's turn. He looks at you, Velas, and he casts a power word, Kill. Is it, do you have less than 100 hit points? I think he had 98.
Sucks.
Yeah, and just dropped dead. I had, in the meantime, me and one other party member were dashing across. We dashed across the thing to get over to the tower. I think because we were at the bottom of the tower, we just had to run up and like alert a shitload of patrols as we were running up. So all of these guys were chasing after us, but we were just trying to get up and get the guy, because then we had another person who could cast Dimension Door, and we had other ways of getting out, and we kind of exit plans ready. But then as soon as we got up and all of us arrived onto the same battlefield as like the now dead Velas, the barely alive Kel. So it was like dead Velas, barely alive Kel, Lug, and then it was Aaron, our half-elf range, one of our half-elf rangers. And then I think Atsilla was the sorcerer, they were nearby. And basically we had a turn where Death summoned his horse and just instantly like killed Kel, knocked me unconscious, and I was like, I was on like 2 failed death saves as well, I think. And then I think knocked Aaron down to like 1 hit point or like single digit hit points. And then Aaron just like grabbed my unconscious body and started running with me, and I think he had some means of flying or feather fall, and he like grabbed my body and just jumped off the edge of the tower and then like feather fall down. And then like Atsilla ran over, cast Dimension Door at me to get us out, and then Aaron like I think he dashed or something the other way. But yeah, basically like 4 out of 7 died.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Not a true TPK, but I mean, like,
died as well. Yeah, it was but it ended the campaign. So
yeah. And I mean, like, there is an aspect to that where TPKs, because. Well, let me ask you this, actually, Martin. Why do you think a TPK has the potential to end a campaign?
Because D&D is a game of investment. You get invested in the characters, you get invested in their storylines and where they're going. The items you have become your favorite things to use. The NPCs that you've established relationships, those are like they've done studies, like imagined relationships and stuff are programmed in our brains the exact same way, like memories from RPG sessions and like stories and other things like that. They're recorded in our brains the exact same way as regular memories from our actual lives. And so like emotionally there isn't really a difference there in terms of like how you would feel upon like losing all of those, because it's not just like, unless you have, and particularly for parties that don't have a cleric, a druid, a paladin, someone else like that, like a divine soul warlock, someone who can cast those revivification spells, or they don't have access to that, or maybe there's somewhere where they can't get someone back to that, you're just done. The plotline ends, and then not only do you have the in-person, oh crap, someone's dead, their storyline just ended, and like they're like, for lack of a better word, trauma of that whole thing happening.
Yeah.
Then you also, when you come back next week, have to deal with the ramifications of that in game, and essentially mourn that character in game as well. So it's like a double whammy on that.
Yeah, true.
And then with a TPK, if everyone dies, then like really there's a big risk there that people just get so kind of disheartened from it, particularly if they're not like, if they've never had a character die before, or if they're very new to the game, or if they're extremely attached to their character. If everyone dies, they can maybe just lose interest in progressing the rest of the story, particularly if that's like happened at a higher level where you have maybe multiple years of investment into that story and where it's going and the plot lines, and like as well, because like I know you, like me, runs backstory heavily integrated into the main story of the game. I feel like that's personally, anyway, I feel like that's the best way you can kind of get your players invested, is to include stuff from their backstory and ties and stuff like that and plot hooks. And if everyone just goes, all of those plot hooks are gone, unless someone makes, I'm this character's brother and I'm coming back for vengeance.
I'm
You
the
know?
new wizard, Schmandalf.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm Baragorn. Like, but yeah, I think it's mainly like the grief, the loss of investment, and like the time you and the perception that you like. Why should I continue? The story's kind of done. We can't do what I want to do. That kind of stuff, and like yeah, it's natural to worry about those things. You've spent like real life hours, like thinking about that and what you're going to do, planning your moves, and like kind of trying to anticipate where things are going, and then it's just like you're invested in certain plot lines. You want to see where stuff goes. It's like getting it. It's like when if a TV show gets cancelled, like it's you were invested
Yeah,
in seeing where it goes.
yeah, absolutely. And
Or alternatively, it happens because because of a mistake on the DM's part, and it was like a ridiculously badly balanced fight, and everyone thinks it's very cheap, and they get kind of pissy about that. That's another way it could go.
that is another way it can go. I mean, yeah, I mean, like I wasn't at that near TPK you had, but like
I was texting
if
you guys, so I was like live updating the D&D chat from that session, being like, "This person's dead. This person's dead. This person's dead."
yeah, I was oh, you did actually, I remember that. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, it's like it from your description of it, and I'm going to base purely on your description. It seems as though it happened within a couple of rounds. Like within a couple of rounds, like two
Yeah,
people were dead, a couple of people are bleeding out, and now everyone's desperately trying to get away.
there was like
Um,
there was two people dead and two people unconscious in 2 rounds. Like,
yeah,
but the basis of 2 rounds once everyone had kind of gotten together into the fighting, and yeah, and then it was literally like at the most it was maybe 6 rounds.
okay. 6 rounds is actually quite decent
Oh, sorry, yeah,
for combat.
but it was like 2-3 rounds of a split party, and then 2-3 rounds of everyone together, if you get me.
Yeah, yeah,
And like and for me and some other people, a lot of our first 2-3 turns were spent running to get to the battlefield.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's yeah. Sorry, I'm very death is very overwhelming. Um,
Yeah.
specifically death himself, the guy death
Yeah.
will
Oh
overwhelm
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I mean that's a good reason though. TPKs do happen an awful lot because they can happen because of
Yeah.
unbalanced, encounters and stuff.
It can happen with
Um,
balance encounters as well, and the dice just doesn't go your way. Like
yeah,
it can just happen. Like I nearly insta killed Mike's druid character in like the second or third session he had joined the campaign,
yeah,
because he walked away from two frost giant zombies. He tried to walk back away, not realizing they have like a 10 or 15 foot range. So
yeah.
he took two reactionary attacks from like frost giant great axes,
Mm.
and they both crit.
Oh Jesus,
He took like, I want to say like
that's
I want to
12 plus strength, whatever strength is for
yeah,
frost strength,
6.
25 or something.
Yeah, I want to say I feel like he took around 58 damage
Oh,
in like they were, I think they were like level 8 or 9, so it was, I think he had like single digit hit points, and that was the second round of that fight.
yeah.
Yeah, it could just
Yeah, I mean,
happen.
that's honestly that's probably the most forgiving part of the game is that if something happens by the dice's count,
Yeah,
that's really on no one, and it can happen. I mean, like crits can happen. You might roll excessively high in damage. You might someone might fail on death saves. That's the most common one. I had a character you mentioned about introducing new characters and the kind of double whammy of having your character die in this session, and then next session when you come back and you have your next character ready to go. From a story perspective, people still have to mourn the character that just died. And
yeah,
anytime I've ever seen a character die uh, in a D&D game, it's usually towards the end of the session. I don't think I've ever seen it happen early in the session to the point where they have to sit there for 2 more hours or 2.5 more
yeah,
hours. It usually happens in the latter half, so they might have to stay there for a half hour more, and then the session ends, or maybe it happens at the very end and the DM decides to call it there. But you have that second day then when you come back and you're like, okay, last week was kind of bad because I lost my character, but I made this cool new character ready to go. And you come back and you're like, oh, right, these guys have in character we've yet to process
Mm.
what has happened last week. It might be a whole. I've seen a lot of stuff where like people will role play taking the body out of respect and burying it, and some people will say some words, and you're still kind of role playing a funeral, which is like
Yeah.
it's dramatic and it's poignant, but it's not necessarily fun in the most traditional sense.
Yeah, it's good
I
story and good character work, but it's not necessarily fun. It's morbid and kind of sad, and like particularly
Yeah,
if the person who died is like sitting across like waiting to play their new character, and you
exactly,
know,
because
like you saying this is just reminding them how they just lost their old character, which they just got
yeah,
over by making a really cool character that they're excited to play.
not only did they lose their character, but now they have to wait the first 40 minutes of the game until you've buried their other
Yeah,
character, and
while
they just have to
everyone
sit there and watch.
while everyone talks about how cool and awesome their dead character was.
Exactly, yeah. Well, when I've only lost a couple of characters, but I lost my Air Ganassi monk, um, and his name was it's Air in Japanese. What is it?
Kazu.
Kaz. It was Kaz. He went by Kaz, but it was
Yeah.
Kaze was his name, yeah. And he got killed. And the very next session I came back, and that exact thing happened. They held his funeral in the local tavern, and people knew he had been helping out around town, so some townsfolk came to offer their respects. And for the most part, they sat there. But then, in a weird like turn of events, they were like, right. So I guess we need to find another recruit anyway. So in the same like basically like in the exact same gathering of people to mourn this character, they went into the back room, set up a table, and started having interviews. And the character I was playing after that was my wizard Balthazar, who is a wizard who wants to be a magician, so he's like an illusionist. And he showed up at my other character's funeral disguised as like, do you know like when you'll get this, right? Particularly being from our hometown.
Okay.
You know when you go to literally any wake, right?
I know
And
exactly who you're gonna say.
you go to this might be very specific to our hometown. I'm hoping Irish people as a whole will get this. People from not from Ireland, maybe not. But you basically go to the wake and the coffin is laid out, and it's an open coffin usually, and then the family is lined up around the room, and the kind of further along you get, it's like the less important family. It's like the,
That
the
is
parents and the
a
brothers and sisters will be first, and
very
it wraps
specifically
around.
Irish thing, apparently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, here's some insight into how Irish funerals work, folks. Yeah, so that you go, bodies laid out, the family are there. They're usually sitting around these kind of chairs
Yeah.
that line the room.
Goes from the top of the coffin around in terms of who's closest to the person who's died.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. So again, like spouses, brothers, sisters, parents, they'll all be up the
Yeah.
top. Cousins and aunts and uncles will be after that, and so on. It runs down.
Yeah.
So with that, every single funeral I've ever been to, there's always, because the funeral places are like in the middle of in the city, right?
Yeah.
There'll always be someone who wanders in, and usually they're a little bit grubby looking. They're
sorry.
quite often, but not always, wearing double denim. And you're not 100% sure if they actually knew the person who they're offering their condolences about. Perhaps they just walked by in the street and was so overcome with like secondhand grief that they had to come in and just say that they're sorry for your loss. Or maybe they're just being weird. I don't know. But that's always one at every funeral I go to. So I came in and I pretended I was some owl fella who wandered in off the street. He looked a bit strange. And I literally got up and I walked around the D&D table, and I shook everyone's hand as if I was actually at a funeral.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, Jesus, it's pure sad. Now it's pure sad. He was some man for one man, so he was. He's well rested, right? He'll be happy where he's going to a better place. Do you know how it is now? So don't you?"
Yeah.
And
No
and,
fear
and
of
then I was like,
grim episodes.
and then I was like, I know how you feel. I know how you feel. Jason, it's like and I went. I was actually Dan's hand was the last one I grabbed. I took Dan's hand and I went. It just feels like the magic's gone out of your life, isn't it? And then Dan knew what I was doing, and he's like, yeah, sure, I guess. And then I'm like, well, not anymore. And I dropped my disguise
Oh
self.
my god. Oh my god. You're like the
And
dude who brought a guitar to my dad's funeral. Oh my god.
I immediately drop out, and I'm like a wizard in like a top hat, and I look like a magician. I have a cloak, and I'm doing all the hand drama and everything. And I start showing off all my minor illusion stuff, because I'm only like a third level wizard,
Yeah.
so I'm doing like minor illusion, and I basically took like I had virtually no combat spells. I had like 2 combat spells. Everything else I took was like I had Misty Step, so I could teleport to disappear from one place to another. I had I had Blur, or the one that makes like 3 of you, and you have to roll a dice to see if you hit the
Yeah,
right one.
that's Blur. Yeah.
Is a Blur. Or it's Blur not disadvantage on hits, and then it's it's Mirror Image is the one I'm thinking of. I also
Oh,
took Mirror
sorry. Yeah,
Image.
yeah.
I think I took Blur as well. It's all stuff that would make me hard to hit and kind of make me seem like I'm casting illusions and stuff. But it really took the. I had to sit there for like 40 minutes not playing, and I'm like, look, if I'm gonna start playing now, I'm gonna make up for lost time. So I just took the rest of them for a ride, like.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I suppose like that is the upside to like maybe not like I suppose with a TPK as well you could do it. Sorry, I keep leaning back from the mic. I really need to stop doing that. But like with the like a TPK, I guess like you do have the opportunity to like hammer out a new group dynamic. If you like particularly like different classes, different races, that kind of stuff. Maybe you get like it's like the silver lining, and that well, you know, if you had a particularly cool idea you're waiting for the next campaign to do, maybe you can do that now, you know, that kind of way. It's like a new opportunity basically. But yeah, it can be very grim and very like ugh, like with a TPK like.
Let me ask you something, because the reason I wanted to do TPKs this week, I think the last time we actually recorded, we talked about me potentially doing firearms
Yes.
as a topic, and I will get to it because I have a lot of strong feelings on the matter. And I've put too much of my life into it to walk right now.
Would you describe yourself as a powder keg?
Uh, ready to go. So what I want to ask you is, we recently had okay. So for those who don't know, and no spoilers, but there was some deaths in Critical Role recently.
Oh, it's all over. It's all over the place. There were
Yeah, it was heavy. It was bigger than Campaign 2's death. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
Because yeah. Anyway, I'll stay away from spoilers on that one. So that happened, and the internet is talking about it a lot. Matt Mercer got a lot of crap for it because people said he was too harsh and all this kind of stuff.
I got so angry at a Polygon article I saw, and I nearly hate Reddit. I nearly hate Reddit, but that's how they goddamn get you. Right? Because the title of the thing was Critical Role Bloodbath, Mercer at his cruelest, or why was he so cruel? And I was like, Matt is not being cruel. Matt is playing the game. And if you watch what happened, they just got extremely unlucky. They I've watched the full episode. It is one of the most insane death spirals I've ever seen. It was an extremely chaotic episode, and they nearly got away with it. Like before the fight started, they were nearly home free, and they just got really unlucky. I won't say any more about it because things do change. Certain things change and get revealed and stuff like that in the following episode. But yeah, it wasn't Matt being cruel, and that's the thing that really annoyed me, was that I specifically that Kotaku article. No, it wasn't Polygon. Sorry, Polygon. It was Kotaku, and of course it was Kotaku. But like, yeah, it was just
honestly, I've seen articles like that from both of them, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, but like generally Polygon's pretty okay. At least in my limited experience with them. But yeah, it was I was like, he's not being cruel. He's just like the creature. You can describe the creature as cruel. You can still call it a bloodbath if you want to call it a bloodbath, because that is accurate. Bodies dropped, but like to call a DM cruel for. I watched the fight. It was a very hard fight. It was a challenging fight. It was what I would mostly describe it as would be an unfortunate fight. They got very unlucky with certain rolls, and crit happens.
Crit happens, exactly.
You know?
No, absolutely. I mean, and like, I feel like people have a hard time, but we mentioned it already, like coping with the death of a character, or even the death of multiple characters, or near or complete TPK. It's not an easy thing to deal with. The game you were just playing is no longer a game because all these people now are gone.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough thing to cope with. I think people don't always realize that they're watching a show or game, when they're watching Critical Role.
Yes.
They think, because even though people might logically think There are those out there who think that the whole thing is scripted, which is
which
just
is ridiculous. They
like
filmed too many cool things for it not for it to be scripted.
yeah, and like the effort it would take, it takes so much more effort to script that and then try to convincingly pull it off than it, especially when like keep in mind there's hundreds of hours of that
Yeah.
show up on the internet,
Also,
and there's
there's like
millions of people who watch.
there's been normally
You know,
between like 7 and 8 players, depending on
yeah,
guests coming in. Like scripting was at least 4 hours of content every single week
every
for
week,
eight
millions of people
players.
watching. Where
Millions
if
of
anyone makes a slight
yeah,
slip up or the wrong expression or they give something away, someone's gonna spot it on the hours and hours of content that are there because people watch and rewatch these episodes, and there's people who have YouTube channels dedicated to analyzing each episode.
yep,
So like it's not scripted. Let's just put that out there.
yeah,
We leave that it's not scripted. But I think that there's an unconscious part of us when we are watching it unfold that maybe we think that this is a show like any other show that we watch. Like
exactly.
it's like something that we watch on Netflix or Amazon or something like that. Like why did that happen? And most times when we watch a show with characters that we love, things happen because preemptively someone in a writer's room decided that this person is going to die or that this thing is going to go wrong. But and I think again on a conscious level we know that about Critical Role. We
Mm-hmm.
know it's a game and they're rolling dice there in front of us and things do or do not go their way. But I think unconsciously we associate Critical Role in the same way we see other forms of entertainment where it is predetermined and therefore something has gone wrong,
Yep.
or rather someone did something wrong in order to make it this way. And oftentimes it's not that, it's just the dice rolls.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's the thing, right? With D&D and stuff like that, or rather with like traditional media like TV, like books, whatever, if a character dies, unless the point of their death is to show how like meaningless life is and how meaningless a single death is in the context of that world, like in something like very grimdark, usually in a show or a movie or a book, when a character dies, it has an impact. There is some grander point being put across by their death, the manner of their death. Um,
They
like
sacrifice themselves for a noble
yeah,
cause.
hold the door,
They turn
like
to their loved one and say, "I love you" right before they die. So at
yeah,
least they got to say
or
that. There's
yeah,
always that moment.
or they get some kind of like deep last words, or you know they get to make an impact with their death. But in D and D,
Hmm.
it can just happen, and it does
It can just happen.
it can just happen because of a bad dice
You
roll.
can get Joel'd in D&D.
Jolt. Oh yeah,
Joel'd,
yeah, yeah.
well,
Sorry, yeah, yeah. I was like running like my mental index of like the monsters in 5e, going, what's a jolt?
yeah, like, but I mean, like in terms like that. I think that's why that for those wonder Last of Us part two.
Yes.
Um, it like I think that's why that game rubbed people the wrong way initially. Because that is one of the most unceremonious deaths I've ever seen in a scripted thing ever. It just happens. It is brutal. It is unforgiving. And in the moment where the person who loves him, Ellie, comes into the scene, she's begging, and he doesn't even get to turn to her and say, "Ellie, it's okay," or "Ellie, I love you," or anything like that. He's just no, dead, gone, done. You
Just
don't get a moment to
spoilers for The
process it.
Last of Us.
Look, if you haven't played it, and
Also,
honestly,
yeah, yeah, that
honestly,
was
not
all over the
not
internet.
even the most like that was the thing where the day the game dropped, that was the thing the internet was talking about.
Yeah,
5 days later, there was three other things in that game, three or four other big things where people were either loving or hating that game. I personally think it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. I haven't been able to bring myself to play again because it wrecked me, but in the
yeah,
best way. But yeah, like typically that's an outstanding one. But typically, when we watch media that is pre-written, movies and television and stuff, it is satisfying. When someone dies, it's satisfying. It's earned. And this just TPKs are usually not that because you don't start the session that week, or you might just like it can happen just fighting some orcs on the side of the
yeah,
road. And yeah, we're not even in a big thing right now.
yeah. Particularly early
We're,
level.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we might be on our way to. We might be on a cool quest because this guy stole something from this other town, so we have to pursue him here. And on the road there, two of your party members get killed by orcs just because the rolls go the wrong way. And orcs hit hard; they've like crit and stuff. So like, and then you're like, oh well, now I need to introduce two new characters, and it's a whole dynamic change.
Mm.
Um, it's actually something I wanted to ask you about because I wanted to pick your brain. So that's one reason. Critical Role is one reason we're talking about this. The second reason is that we very recently had something akin to a TPK, a subverted or maybe an avoided TPK.
Yes.
You guys faced off against the Morrigan. Um, can you explain what happened there from your perspective and why you think it happened or why you think it didn't happen?
Okay. So I was really dumb and decided to not take a deal from
I
a
wasn't
fake
fishing for you to
goddess.
say that. Okay, just let me put that out there. I was not fishing for you
Oh
to
no,
say
yeah,
that.
no, but like after talking about how dumb it was to throw a vial of acid on the giant machine, I feel I have to own up to my own idiocy. Um, so I basically ignored two fairly large hints from Connor in the voice of an NPC going, "Take the steel, take the steel," and then we went into a fight with four Death Knights, and by the skin of our teeth, killed them all.
Yeah.
At the end of the
Surprisingly,
fight,
I
yeah.
did not think you'd make it past the Death Knights, but you did. So
Yeah,
fair play on that.
yeah. I at the end of that fight, we'd killed the Death Knights, but I had been dropped to zero like twice already and had to drink a potion of superior healing just to get back up to like somewhat reasonable hit points. My attack dog sidekick was on like 10 hit points. My NPC Cathbad, who we had brought in for the fight, who was my apprentice, he was currently unconscious and rolling death saves. Arkham, our warlock, was bound up in a thing that was slowly burning him and killing him, and barely. He hadn't taken a lot of massive hits, but it wasn't also full hit points. Our Zealot Barbarian Wabu was already into his I'm so angry I can die, I can't die phase, which is like admittedly cool, but like that also means he's already lost all of his hit points and already done his relentless rages. So he's basically running on as long as I'm raging, I can't be killed. And then yeah, because we had killed the other ones, I was like, we could do this. We're gonna fight her, and we're gonna like intimidate her into giving us what we want. So I went up to try and stop her, and like basically like demanded the item we were looking for, which is the phylactery, and kind of basically implied like, give us this or we're going to like attack you and kill you, and that's not something you do with like a fey goddess who controls fate and is the personification of the moon god's malice.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not something new. So she telekinetically threw me halfway across the battlefield, turned into a ancient solar dragon, did her breath weapon, and the breath weapon knocked all of us out except Wabu, who can't be knocked out because he is too angry to die. And that is where that session ended. And then our next session picked up, where no, sorry, there were only two of us still up because Aerith was back up as well.
No, I think actually the breath was the opening thing that happened on the second
Oh, sorry,
session.
it was. We ended with her
Yeah,
turning
yeah,
into the dragon. Yeah, we ended with her
yeah,
turning
yeah.
into the dragon. Breath weapon opening move of the second session, and basically dropped everyone. And then she turned back into her normal form and banished Wabu, leaving all of us rolling death saves to see what was happening. And it was looking really, really, really bad. It was looking like we had like I had inadvertently started a TPK, and I was just flashing back to himself throwing acid on the gears, and I was like, oh my god, I threw acid on the gears. But yeah, it was really like I was sweating. Like I was already making a new character in D&D Beyond. Like I was like when it wasn't my turn, I was making a new character, and when it was my turn, I would flick back over to my character sheet and roll death saves. Like, I was worried. And I was thinking it would be a TPK, but so this character, the Morrigan, her whole thing, and we encountered her in like early levels, like I want to say like 5, 6 maybe last time we were there.
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
And as we've progressed through my story and stuff, and encountered her and her forces more often, we have just basically discovered that like rather than like just destruction or death or whatever, what she really, really, really loves is suffering. Like she wants to cause the most amount of suffering possible, and so instead of just killing us all outright, what she did was like bind us up with tree roots, like in Vecna style from Stranger Things, where we were all just up in like the tree roots like that. And then she made me watch as she like telekinetically grabbed my spear off me and went to drive it through the skull of my apprentice in front of me for disobeying her. And then at the last possible moment, like it was like the point was like in the bridge of his nose already. And she was about to ram it through his skull, and right before that happened, our bloodhunter Aerith nobly offered to sacrifice his life instead of Cathbad's. And then you dropped into one of the sickest monologues I've heard you do in a long time. where you just explained how she had basically completely ruined Eric's life from the outset, and instead of like giving him more power, had intentionally set him off to be like driven mad by ancient like old gods, like spiral into like addiction and like separate from his family and friends, like lose his faith in the cause, basically like entirely take his like whole life and just and twist it and crush it, just to wring all of the misery out of it as possible. And then you decapitated him. Well, she decapitated him with Lug's spear in like simultaneously. She left the spear, telekinetically left it like against my apprentice's eye like that, or head like that, while she was monologuing, and then like finished on a killer line like, you don't mess, you do not disobey fate because I am she. And then like telekinetically grabbed the spear, in doing so turned it sideways, cut out one of my apprentice's eyes, it spins back to her hand, and she in one swipe decapitates Aerith. And then we all kind of black out, wake up outside the forest that she lives in, all of us like unconscious and like bleeding, but like Wabu was that's where she had banished him to, and he was able to come around and find us and help stabilize us and stuff like that. But the reason I bring all that up and give all that context is because the reason she didn't just kill us all was because doing that would cause me specifically far, and like Lug as a character, far more misery than just if she had just killed people. Like she like, oh, and she also like stabbed a dagger through my armor into my chest, into my heart, snapped it off at the hilt, and I have some like really powerful curse on me now as well. And that's just melded with my flesh now, and I have some incredibly powerful curse on me. But yes, that is so instead of killing us all, she did something that she could do to cause the most misery and pain possible, in that like using my own weapon that I had disobeyed her with and threatened her with, she cut out my apprentice's eye and killed one of my best friends, and then just kicked us all out. And so like not only did I fail, I also accepted the like messed up fate she originally had planned for me. She killed one of my best friends, and then she like half blinded my apprentice, who's basically like Lug's son in this campaign in terms of like how it's played. So like she could have just killed me, but like not doing that and then killing other people or maiming other people, particularly with his weapon, the one that is synonymous with him in the campaign, and then just leaving him to like deal with that and have to carry on and do all the rest of the stuff and continue the story, would be far more painful than for my character than just death, which would just allow him to rest.
Yeah, it's oh god, I was gonna say it's more like a paid service model where like you pay a small amount of grief every single month instead of just having like one big off lump sum of grief.
Patreon.
Yeah, a Patreon. Yeah. It's grief as service.
Oh god.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good explanation. So for one, it was a very harrowing couple of weeks that we had there.
Yeah.
I guess there's a couple of lessons to be taken from that. One is some battles are not winnable.
Yeah.
Some battles just you can certainly you can try, but like do so at your own detriment. You know, it may end very poorly for you. This is something I learned from Matt Colville. You know, he very much believes that there are sometimes like, and like it's not always like that. Hey, this person's a god. You can't necessarily take them on. Sometimes it's like, oh, the orcs are holed up in the old ruined fort. And maybe someone goes, let's just rush in there and get them. Because if you know as a DM, there's like 20 orcs in there. There's no way they're going to survive against 20 orcs. Like, that's not a good plan.
Yeah.
And that in that situation is an unwinnable circumstance, because if you just rush in, yeah, of course you're gonna get like javelins and arrows thrown at you. You're gonna attack by great axes. There's no way you survive. Some unwinnable circumstances can be changed, Kobayashi Maru, but there are some circumstances where it's like, I did did my best to telegraph this to you, because
in hindsight, it's incredibly obvious.
Yeah, I it was so funny.
You
Like,
messaged me going, I
funny.
can't believe you didn't take that deal.
Like I think I basically had like I think you told like one I think you told did you tell Kerwin I think you told Kerwin that you were going to the Calaquil
I told Priddock.
to but you definitely told Priddock. I think you
Yeah.
told Kerwin as well, and Kerwin was just like, "Don't mess with the Morrigan. She's everything she ever touches turns to ruin. It's not worth it." And then you told Priddock, and like we have to go to the Calaquil to get this phylactery back. And then Priddock was like, "Look, that's a terrible idea." She's like, "God, you'll definitely die." And then right as you're about to step into the forest, she telepathically contacts you and goes, "Look, I'll give you the phylactery, and I won't harm any of your friends. All I want is like a promise that you will return to the fate that I previously set out for you." And you chose that moment to have some character growth
I
and be
know,
like,
right?
"Nah, not doing it. Let's go kill a god." Um, and
Look, I just say like,
it was honestly again it was kind of a badass moment, but I also in a weird way like the idea that like because again that's the kind of thing you'd never see happen in a written show
mm,
where typically the hero makes the right call, or if they're told by the bad guy walk away, just walk away, they're like, no, I must stay true, and they'll follow through. But like usually they'll end up pulling it off because they're the hero.
yeah,
But in D&D the dice make the decisions and stuff, so like it doesn't always work that way. And in this case it very much didn't, and even though you probably made what in any show would have been a growing character moment where you're no longer shouldering all of this burden yourself. You're like, no, I'm with my friends and we're going to face this together,
yeah.
like we promised we would. And like, yeah, and then it ended up backfiring massively. It's just, yeah, yeah. That's like that's some like Game of Thrones, Walking Dead kind of unforgivable writing where it's like, no character is safe.
Yeah.
Anyone can go. Um, and yeah, and it ended up. I knew planning that. I knew when I basically you guys fought the four knights in the first session, and then the Morrigan as the dragon in the second one. And I knew in between those sessions, I'm like, look, I'll leave it open for the possibility because I've seen the guys pull off some stupid stuff before, like stuff stuff I designed to be very challenging, and then like they just decimate the bad guy, or they breeze through this no problem whatsoever. Because maybe sometimes it's because I forget someone has a spell or an ability that like trumps that thing entirely, or maybe it's because like the dice are really on your side, or you're rolling really high damage and stuff, and you end up winning it in battles quite easily that should have been deadly level encounters.
Yeah.
But I knew there had to be that the possibility of you failing was real. Um, we probably have like 12 to 14 weeks left in this campaign. I'm trying to finish it by the end of the year, so I'm giving myself until the end of the year to finish it, and that's it. I'm comfortable I can do it in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
But if you guys had decided now, or if you guys had died outright, there would have been a lot of stories left unfinished, and a lot of different, it would have could have gone anyway, really.
Yeah.
So I knew that if it's not going to be a TPK, because I didn't really want a TPK, but I also didn't want to just let you guys off.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be in the character of the Morgan to just be like, I changed my mind, go off and have your lives or whatever. But also, like, I felt like there needed to be consequences both for the characters, they felt something, and also for the players. So for Cathbad, I purposed, and I did this earlier in the campaign as well. I was a real asshole for doing it, but I made a half sea elf pirate kind of character, an admiral, and he was the head of a criminal organization called the Crimson Corsairs. But I modeled him off of Negan from The Walking Dead. So I'm like, when I was designing him and thinking how he would act, I'm constantly in the mindset of how can I make them as miserable as fucking possible? Like, how can I just break these people?
Yeah.
And at one point you refused to hand your spear to him when he asked, and you were meant to be getting recruited, so you're standing there, and he's like, "Can I have your spear, please?" And you're just like, "Nope," because you're like, "I'm not giving this asshole my spear." And he's like, "That's fair enough." And rather than having his like right hand man do something to you, he said to his right hand man, he's like, "Do it." And you were prepped for you to get hurt, and instead he cast lightning bolt on your ally instead
Yeah.
on Arkham, and you were like, because again that's totally a Negan thing where it's like I could hurt this person for doing something wrong, or I can make them feel shit that someone else is getting hurt because they did something wrong. And that's so much more him in my head. And I basically did this to you again here where I took Cathbad's eye.
Yeah.
Um, and like that was kind of it. Like you have something that's cursed now on you. That's like a more personal thing.
Yeah.
Then I did something that would make you feel bad for another character, which is Cathbad. I took his eye. And then I did something that would make you feel bad for another player, and that was killing Aerith.
Yeah, I like immediately Facebook messaged him and was like, I'm so fucking sorry.
I'm going to alleviate some of your guilt here and now.
Oh no,
And
he gave that in the way home. He was like, mate, like I literally wrote this character with the death wish that he'd be killed by something beyond his ken. You're fine.
yes, but something you don't know is that in the week in between, I kind of knew this TPK was coming. And again, I wanted to avoid a TPK, but I knew there had to be some sort of cost. And that's something I think I want people to walk away from this conversation with, is you can avoid a TPK. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, your camera's been funny. Maybe it's just for you. That's fine. Or just for me. That's fine. So you can avoid a TPK, absolutely, right? But you have to give a good reason for it.
Yes.
The players can't feel like you're just handing them an easy way out.
There has to be a consequence.
Sorry?
There has to be consequences.
Yes, exactly. And it's not that you're trying to punish them necessarily, because punishing is the right. I hate the word punishing in D&D. I don't like people using it, because you should never be punishing. It comes with the wrong mindset that the person has done something wrong or that you're meant to hurt them. And I don't feel like that's a problem. I feel like consequence is a much better thing, because actions have reactions, and therefore there should be outcomes to the decisions you've made, but they're not necessarily that they're aiming to punish or hurt you.
Exactly. Punish implies like an antagonistic relationship, and the DM relationship is not it's the exact opposite. It's cooperation.
Exactly. So like I said, TPKs can be avoided. In some situations, you could have all the party get captured instead.
Yes.
You know,
which we also had in another mission where everything went tits up.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, that's like the second one I just realized that's the second one I avoided. Basically, you're robbing a train, and I think the dice rolls went against you, and it was a tough fight, and you ended up, all of you but one got downed. But these were like the Imperials; they were soldiers, and like realistically, soldiers they do go out to kill, obviously, but if they can, they'll also capture and arrest people for further questioning and stuff. So it made sense that they would do that, and that's a very good way of thinking it. If you have like, if an owl bear mauls your party in the woods, the owl bear is not going to take captives. You know, the owl bear is going to eat you. It's an animal. It's what it does.
The owl bear hasn't heard of the Geneva Convention.
Yeah, exactly. Owl bears do not abide by the Geneva Convention. But in this case, because they're like authority figures, it makes perfect sense. You might also have a situation where like drow maybe as they appear, or Duragar as they appear in like more typical D&D campaigns or whatever, can often be like slavers and stuff like that. You know, they will capture people and they will force them to work mines, or they'll sell them off as forced labor and stuff like that. So maybe you guys are captured and now you're in a mining colony, and you're all like chain linked together by the feet, and you're all forced to work, and now you got to figure out how you're going to break out of here, and that can be fun. But again, the main point is that it's justified. It makes sense that these people wouldn't kill you, because they're like, hey, these guys are good labor, let's put them to work. So there's ways you can kind of mitigate that. Another one that could work is if you're friends with a very high level wizard, he might show up at the last second and save you, but you can really only use that one once. You can really only use that one once, because if you use that too often, it becomes very, very unsatisfying very quickly.
The eagle showed twice in all of Lord of the Rings. Twice.
Exactly. Yeah. And even in The Hobbit, there's that one time Gandalf just drops into the goblin thing, and then it's like he basically kicked all that off.
Yeah.
He cannot do that again. Gandalf cannot be the high level NPC that shows up every time something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So with that, you can mitigate these things by, you know, getting captured, or maybe they want to like use you in some other way. Maybe they hold on to you because like, no, they'll be good sacrifice. The cult is like, maybe there'll be good sacrifices to the ritual or something like that.
Yeah.
These can be good reasons to keep your characters alive, but they only work with certain types of monsters as well. In this case, I kind of wrote myself into a corner because the Morrigan doesn't necessarily want prisoners and has no real use for that. And if she wanted something done, she'd have one of her powerful Fey knights do it, not a bunch of schmucks who wandered into our forest. So like that made no sense. So like I said, I had a punishment but again, punishment's the wrong word. But I had a consequence for you as your character, like something personal to him. I had a consequence for your companion, which again reflected back on your character, and then I had one of the player characters killed. And
I
the reason
also
I had the
just
player character,
don't use
sorry,
that spear. I also just don't use that spear anymore.
you don't because it was the one
Yeah,
that beheaded your
yeah.
friend, yeah. And the reason that I don't, or the reason that we killed Aerith is because in the week in between those two sessions, I looked at the party and I knew of every player we had, Gavin was the most comfortable with losing his character. And I came to him and I said, "Hey, I have a proposition for you. If you want to take it, that's perfectly fine. But like, hear me out and just see what you think." And I'm like, "Look, I feel like you're probably the person who's the most comfortable with losing Aerith. I have an idea for how it could happen. I think it would be a suitable consequence to the party for misjudging what they are, this situation."
Mm-hmm.
And we talked a bit back and forth, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm happy enough to do that because Aerith kind of set himself off on this suicide mission where he's like, at some point, something too big or too powerful from a different realm is going to kill me, and that's fine as long as I can, kill some lesser things along the way." So he was fine with that, and he was fine with playing a new character and all that. And I told him we'd make it as satisfying as possible. What he didn't know was the whole thing I had about his whole life, because he wrote a backstory for me
Yeah.
about how he tried to contact a powerful fae to be like a warlock, and in the end accidentally contacted like
Great
a
old one.
cosmic horror being, like a great old one. And in his backstory he wrote that like, "Oh, I made a mistake." But I'm like, I wrote that in that week in between, and I was like, "No, you didn't. You got through to them, to Morgan. You got through to this powerful fae." And she was like, "It'd be hilarious if I sent him here instead." And she redirected your call basically to the worst possible phone, and set his life in chaos. And because of that, he saw horrific things.
Mm.
He became obsessed with it. He was alienated from his family. He had a substance problem. He didn't speak to his mother or father for years, and he kind of lost all his friends and stuff. And that was what she wanted. So I didn't tell Gavin any of that until in the session. So he got all that firsthand at the same time you guys did. But yeah, it was planned that he would volunteer himself, and it was planned that his character would die. Again, when I say planned, I mean
Yeah.
when it was like an unavoidable thing,
Yeah.
it was basically decided that like that would happen, and Gavin very graciously offered up his character to be the sacrifice in that moment.
Gavin's
And
a good dude.
he is a good dude, and he's a damn good D&D player. Because again, he far more so than the rest of you. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you guys do get very attached to your
I
characters.
don't
He's
know
very
what you mean, Connor.
Gav is very very good at keeping at being emotionally invested in his character, but at the same time, being in such a way that like he's able to understand that it is a fictional character, and life does go on after they pass and stuff like that. And he's also like he's always enthusiastic about the next character he'll play and stuff. So, and actually he does have a cool character planned as well, and he's very very pumped about.
Very excited.
Yeah, it should be really good. It should be really really good. But yeah, so that is something you could, again, I couldn't do that with any of the rest of you. I like Mike is quite invested in his character. You and Dan are like, I think you and Dan would drop. Well, you or Dan would drop dead if I killed your character. Like, I think you just give up on life. You just leave. You'd walk off into the sunset, never to be seen again.
I felt like when I thought it was like it's going to be a TPK. I wasn't so much. I wasn't like I would have been like gutted to like not get to do all the cool giant stuff that I wanted to do and all that. Like that, I was gutted with that. But what I felt worst about, like more than like, oh, I'm going to lose my character or whatever, because I've some cool character ideas that I could play.
Yeah.
More than anything, I felt terrible that like I had gotten other people, like I'd gotten the other guys' characters killed. Like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I felt worst about. Like yeah, if Lug dies and like at some point when what's left of the campaign, and like in a like a permanent way. Like we can't revive him, can't do anything. He's just dead. Like that'll suck, and I'll be upset. But I won't like it won't be the end of me. Like I'm not gonna quit the campaign or anything like that. Like I would be upset, absolutely. But like, yeah, no, I wouldn't like lose it completely. I just be like, that really sucks. Oh god, that's awful. And I probably feel like shitty for a few days. But like after that, then I very much would get into the headspace of like, oh, at least I get to play this new character and do a different thing. It was like that I'd gotten the guys killed, but also that I had made, because it would have been the second like TPK in a campaign, like, and I had made the mistake that the first one it caused the TPK, like just really clearly ignoring a warning from the DM. Like that's what I was mostly gutted about. But like no, like yeah, if Lug dies, Lug dies. Like it'll suck, it'll be bad. I'll feel shitty for a little bit, but like I'll get over it.
Yeah, yeah. I do have one more thing I want to kind of this is more of a general character death thing, but it works I think when you lose a character or when you lose all the characters even, like you can potentially bounce back from it and still continue your quest. And it's kind of a storytelling mechanism that I've seen a couple of people use. Primarily Matt Colville did it on The Chain, which was the Chain are a mercenary group in his world. They're an old mercenary group. They've been around for hundreds of years, and they have records dating back, for the battles they've been in for forever. And people did, in just the first 10 or so episodes, they basically started out in a town that was getting attacked, and then they hopped on a ship and they started fleeing. And then that ship ended up in the astral sea for a little bit, and they got boarded by like Mindflayer living organism ship and stuff, Nautiloid or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And then they eventually made it out of that and got to the city of Capital. And in just those like few episodes, a handful of people died. Like multiple characters died in just those few episodes. But the way that they kept the momentum going was because every single member of the team, of the party, was a member of the Chain, and they were traveling with other members of the Chain. Now, all these other members are like nondescript, kind of grayed out characters with no real personalities, other than the fact that they are members of the Chain. But that kind of meant that at any point, if someone lost a character, all they had to do was write a new character who would potentially be part of a mercenary group, which makes sense for a lot of like D&D adventurers, and then they could just show up and then slot their character straight in. And it's like, oh, we're down a man in our squad. You join up, and then whoever you is, the person can go, hi, I'm a dwarf sorcerer, I'm gonna I sure sir, I'm ready, reporting in, excellent, and then like you can just roll straight into that. And I think it's actually a really, really cool mechanic that if someone dies, they can be replaced, or even if the whole party died, you could pick up next week with a whole new party of people, and they could be like, right, so it looks like
and then in the final battle you make them fight the zombified corpses of their old characters.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could just be like, all right, well, we cut back to your order of knights or your mercenary company's main base, and the current ranking officer here has you all join him in his kind of study or whatever, and he goes, all right, we just got reports that that Alpha Company was wiped out up in the foothills. Apparently they were trying to assault this necromancer's fortress. I'm assigning all of you to pick up where they left off, recover their bodies if you can, and accomplish the mission. And then straight off, whole new party back in, and your motivation still stands.
Yeah. No, it's a really good, like that's why like stuff like military campaigns or like those kind of themed campaigns are like so interesting, where you can pull off stuff like that.
Yeah.
I did watch one. I was like a one shot back in the role play days on MeJP's YouTube channel. They did a Monster Hunter guild, like the game Monster Hunter. I get because you're in a guild as part of that, but they did a 2-part, like 3-hour each part D&D session where they played characters in the Monster Hunter world, and they went out and they were hunting the biggest, most dangerous animals, because that's kind of the gimmick of the game Monster Hunter. Yeah, it was really fun and really interesting, and like you could do stuff like that a lot.
And similarly, like if one of them died and they were eaten by the monster, they report back and then they're like, oh, here's a new recruit or whatever, or maybe they're an old recruit who's very haggard and they're kind of like I've been hunting monsters for years.
Smoke a cigarette. Shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can, and anything like that with a guild or an organization or an order of some kind, you can absolutely roll either like a couple of characters in that motivation carries. Something I've always kind of like, I'm always kind of worried about is like, what if like like if you lose one or two characters, and then you for a few months some more characters come in, it's all grand. We still keep going, but then you lose the other two characters that originally started out, and now you're here with four people who actually were never here for the start of the campaign. Some of their motivations might get lost, and maybe that's a structural thing with how like I do campaigns. I tend to have very I'll have something happen, and then you'll go do something else for a while, and then you'll go do something else, and then you'll get back to that original thing because it'll flare up
Yeah.
again, whatever it is. And I tend to do it like that, but maybe in reality it would be better if characters just started and finished an arc all in one chunk, because then if, at least then you know that when you move on to the next arc, if someone died in the last battle in the previous arc with the werewolf kin leader or something like that,
Yeah.
you can slot someone else in, and they don't really need to know all the relevant what's there, because they just need to know, hey, we're starting this new quest now, and there's pirates.
Yeah.
As long as they know everything there is to know about the pirates, because I'm here from the start, we're good.
Yeah. Also, you just kind of like basically proposed the ship of Theseus.
I'm not familiar.
You've seen WandaVision, right?
Yeah.
So do you know the conversation that the two visions have at the end of it, where he's
Yes, where he
like
logics him out of a fight.
but the ship of Theseus is a thought prospect, or basically like the ship of Theseus, like bits of it are replaced over time. The boards, the sails, the mast, the everything about it is replaced over and over time. Is it still the ship of Theseus?
Oh, yes, okay.
Do you know?
Yeah.
And like Vision has a really good answer to it, and it's awesome. But like yeah, what you propose there is basically the ship of Theseus, where if you have a party of four, two of them die, and then you bring in two replacements, and then the other two originals die, and you bring in two replacements. Are the motivations the same? Is it the same party? It's basically ship of Theseus. Um, but no, I totally get what you mean. Like Joe narratively does it like jar with the flow of the story and stuff. And I do run more of a kind of campaign like the one you were saying second like the latter part of that description there, where yeah
It's a full arc all in one and another full arc all in one, yeah.
I basically have only had like two arcs over the course of this campaign where it wasn't directly tied to a player backstory. I had like no sorry I had like three, because the first two arcs were like introductory arcs. There was like the kind of intro one, and then they had another intro, they had another sort of intro arc to get them up. But once they hit like level 5 or so, I started digging into the backstory stuff, and that has gotten us from 5 to 14. And we've kind of done their personal backstories now, and now we're swinging back around to do stuff related to like them looking for the gods that they're supposed to be the champions of, and gaining godly boons to go and fight the big bad guy at the end of it. So we're kind of
Yeah.
we've done one sweep of backstory stuff, and then we had big battles all the way through, and then they discovered their ultimate purpose and fate as a party to be these champions of the gods, and now we're kind of swinging back around again to do more kind of personal arcs with each of them as they go out and find their gods, get their boons, and fully take on the roles and powers that they're meant to.
Yeah, and like I feel like the structure of that is probably more sound when it comes to player death, not player death. Don't kill your players. Killing your players is illegal. That's
Yeah,
murder.
yeah.
And character death and TPKs and stuff like that.
Well, like I didn't have
But yeah,
deaths, but I had two players just leave, basically leave the campaign at
yeah,
like
yeah,
level 8 9, and then I brought in two fresh players, and like yeah, that took a little bit of narrative writing around, but like yeah, it worked out. And I kind of
yeah.
there's ways to tie it in, and honestly now what I do feel was kind of good at the time was that I hadn't really gotten into any end game stuff or hinted at any real end game stuff by then.
Yeah.
So when the two new players came in, oh, it was fate that this happened, and you all met in this way, and you're all, that you can kind of yeah, like kind of finagle things in the right direction.
It's always weird to introduce new characters.
Yeah,
I remember in that first campaign we played in, we started off and there was a small few of us. I think actually I was part of a different group, and then you and a couple others joined in,
yeah,
and we didn't even discuss that you were new people. We're just the party. The party is here, and like we didn't even. There was no point where you like went up to my
yeah,
character and said, "Hi, I'm Lug. I'm from this place." Like no, we dropped
yeah,
in. You're like, "Oh, my character looks like this, and he's a fighter." We're like, "Cool, let's go to the cave and fight those thingies." Like,
yeah.
and there was no we just kind of glossed over that, and then later on, a couple more people joined, and I remember Nicole's character. We ran into her in like a bookshop.
We found her in a wardrobe.
Was it in a wardrobe? That was in a bookshop.
We were in a place, and she was hiding in a. We were in somewhere, and she was like hiding. I remember because she was hiding in a wardrobe, and she fell out, and she looked human, And then we were like, oh, you're a human. And then like it was like, and her illusion shatters, and you see a purple skinned tiefling. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So he fell out of the wardrobe, became a purple skinned tiefling. There was that, and then my housemate Dan joined us for a while as well, and he
Yeah.
just kind of met us in a city and joined us in that city, like, and yeah, it was all.
But again, there was no narrative beat
No,
to that. Like Den was there and like, hi, I'm an elf. My name is Deathlaugh. It was Deathlaugh, wasn't it?
death row.
Deathrow.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
name is Deathrow. I'm an elf, rogue. And they're like, do you want to come along with the group? And
If
he
I
was like, yeah,
remember
sure,
right,
let's go.
the closest thing to an intro he got was we came off this like like a cable car thing into like a heavily trafficked area, and like little kids pickpocket kids like robbed our gold, and were like running away, and they like ran around the corner. We were chasing them, and then like they kind of got away from us, and he was like standing nearby, and he was like, "Were you chasing those kids?" He was like, "Yeah, they stole our money," and he like reached into his own pouch. He's like, "Yeah, I got it back for you," and he like chucked us our gold back because he had like
Yes, yeah.
pickpocketed the pickpocket basically. Which,
Yeah.
in hindsight, isn't actually a bad way to introduce a new rogue character into the thing, particularly if you're in a city, he can be like a contact, but like, it wasn't executed as well as it sounds when I just give you the overview of it there.
No, yeah, true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways of doing it. I probably advise when it's particularly later in a campaign to gloss over it, like give good reason. For players who are coming back in after having lost a character or whatever, or even joining for the first time, try to work with the DM to find a reason why you would be motivated to join this group and help them on their mission.
Align yourself with a faction.
Yeah, like Gavin is currently playing a temp character at the moment
Yeah.
who is from your people. He's a Kale as well, and it made sense for him to do that because he would have a reason to want to go and fight the giants that are attacking his home. So perfectly reasonable. He'd be like, "Hey, I'll come with you and back you up." But he's going to stop playing that character once we're done with this arc, and he has a different character, more of a long-term character then lined up for the remainder of the campaign. But yeah, I do think come my next campaign, I'll probably end up doing some sort of organization thing where the organization has goals, so these all the characters can share that.
Yeah.
And also, if someone dies, you can just be replaced by another recruit from the organization. So we always have that kind of continuity.
Yeah. No, I think I would enjoy something like that. Like I have often toyed with that idea of doing like maybe like a Monster Hunters guild as a party, and
Yeah.
they're set out to like, you could literally do like the fairy tale anime, because the whole thing is they're a mages guild and they go out and they do, it's literally like a D&D thing. They have a mages guild, they have a guild master, and they go out and they do missions of certain rank, and once they complete a harder mission their rank goes up. It's like D to C to B to A to S to like double S or whatever, and then like
Yeah.
you double S you're a master, like that kind of stuff. And I've often toyed with doing something like that, because I think it would be a good idea to do it. But yeah, and like I said, a very not easy but narratively logical way of doing, like, if a character dies or if everyone dies they come back. Like there's always that real classic episode of the Power Rangers, of like a Power Ranger series, where they're like, oh yeah, we sent like a group of rangers in before you guys to deal with this bad guy, but they never came back. And then it's like 3 seasons into that show and they're like off the fight, they're like showing down with like having a showdown with the bad guy, and he's like, oh Rangers, you might look who is back, and he like press a button and suddenly all of the old Power Rangers are back, but they've got like evil messed up like masks and stuff. Like, you have to fight, you have to fight them and prove you're better than the top squad or whatever. You could do that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Martin, I do believe that's all the time we have for today.
You mean we don't have time for me to go on another rambling Power Rangers tangent?
No more Power Rangers for you, sir. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, or topics you'd like us to cover, please. Please, Martin is showing his Green Ranger dagger there.
Yes, it's a flute.
Please
and
tweet
a
us
knife.
at Micflayers Pod on Twitter. You can also find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor Breaker, and Radio Republic. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
You can mostly find me on Twitter at So Sorry It's Over, where I do also talk slightly less, maybe slightly more sometimes, about Power Rangers.
But not at all.
Not at all. No, it's mostly TV shows and weightlifting you'll get on there. But yes, you can find me on Twitter at So Sorry It's Over. Also on Twitter, on the Micflayers podcast Twitter at Micflayers Pod, if you want to shoot us a message there. Connor, where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me on the internet at 0.Connor, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important.
And that's it, guys. As always, on the aforementioned platforms. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope it wasn't a little too grim talking about all the character death and TPKs and stuff. But guys, thank you so much for watching. We will see you all next Friday at 6 p.m. Irish time for another episode of the Micflayers podcast. Later.
Later, folks.